Number two.
Number
three. Number three. Should we skip number 3 and just go to number 2?
Well, there it is. Number 3, Katrin David's daughter. So now we're getting into the realm of multiple times games champions. And Katrin comes in third here. This is also going to be her 9th year at the games. So that's the same number of games appearances as Cara Saunders and Sam Briggs, all of whom are still competing, obviously, in the sport. She had a rough start her first 2 years at the games where she was 30th and 24th. But when she came back and won in 2015, she's been inside the top 5 for 6 consecutive years. First, 5th, 3rd, 4th, 2nd. And I don't really know if there is more to say about her, but that alone is enough to keep her inside the top 3 for now. She has 13 career event wins, tied for second most all time amongst women with Annie Thor's daughter. She's really good. She's really consistent, and she's done it against some of the best competition in recent years. She's earned her spot here at number 3.
One of the most charismatic athletes, I think. I think she's taken what she has and run with it in terms of all categories. Her fitness, her personality, her presence in the space. Always super easy to interview behind the scenes. Always available. Doesn't seem to be caught up in her head when she's, when the events aren't going on. And she's taken a leadership position amongst the girls. I think amongst that women's class, her presence is for surely felt. She has incredible presence when she walks onto the floor or in the corral. Sorry, Brian.
No. Unlike a couple of the other girls that are still competing in the space, but despite the changes in the season the last 2 years, she's continued to find ways to get into the top. And if you look at that 2019 season in particular, she's a great example of this thing that I've been talking about, because she barely snuck into the top 10. I think she was either 9th or 10th, and Annie was like 5 points behind her but missed the cut. And so Annie did not get to continue in the competition, and Katrin did. Katrin rose all the way up to 4th place over the course of the weekend. And that's what I'm saying, is we could have expected people like Annie Thor's daughter, who just barely missed the cut, or a Brooke Wells, or a Laura Horvath, or a Pat Vellner, or a Cole Sager, to make similar moves on that weekend, but they didn't have the chance. And if not for 30-ring muscle-ups being in the final event, she might have even been able to overtake Jamie Green and get on the podium that year. So her case study from 2019, her barely getting in the top 10 and then rising all the way up to 4th, is exactly the reason why I think that this year we're going to have a much better reflection of where these athletes. I said there's 7 women still competing this year who are in the top 10, and 5 guys. I think we'll watch as the weekend unfolds, the games coming up, athletes continue to move up the leaderboard and ultimately settle into spots that are most reflective of their relative fitness.
Has Katrin ever beat Tia at the games?
Well, yeah. In 2015 and 2016, Katrin won the games, and Tia was second.
Yeah, that's incredible as a feat, but it also gives Katrin something that probably the other women don't have. In her mind, Tia is still beatable because she's done it twice.
Sure, and if you look at those 2 years specifically, one of the things Katrin's well known for is her ability to fight. And in both years, it wasn't a runaway victory. 2015 was incredibly close between her, Sarah, and Tia coming down the stretch, and she was able to pull it out given the context of the rules that year. And in 2016, we had one of the maybe the best exchange of blows that we've ever had, especially in the women's field. In the morning on Sunday, they had 3 back-to-back workouts: the handstand walk, the plow pull, the sled pull, whatever it was, and then the sprint. And I think it was Katrin took the lead, Tia took the lead, Katrin took it back to her, and then we went to the tennis stadium for the finale, and Katrin was just barely able to fend her off. But again, Katrin beat her on the rope chipper, and then Tia beat her on the final event, and it wasn't sure how it was going to settle. And they were just, like I said, exchanging blows all day long, and ultimately she had to, pulled ahead of her by just enough to win. And that's what Katrin's known for, is fighting till the end. And she's 6 top 5s in a row in this day and age. It's hard to look beyond that.
And Brian, will you explain that? What the smart strategic move that Katrin did that year by there wasn't a cap on the event? Will you explain what happened there?
2015 was the first year we saw the pegboard, and then Pedal to the Metal 1, a lot of the women were unable to climb the pegboard. And so once that event finished, there were 12 girls that had at least done one pegboard, and everyone else in the field tied for 13th, which earned them, I think it was either 54 or 56 points. And Katrin was one of the girls who was unable to do the pegboard. Tia was able to do it, so she got more points than that, obviously. And those 56 points, I think Katrin's total margin of victory that year was like 52 points. So she would have lost the games if she received 0 points for that event. And I kind of think that in that scenario, because it was a new implement, Dave did not brief that they would have to do it before the games, as we talked about with some other things. I think it would have been more appropriate, not to say that they should have been disqualified from moving on in the competition, but it's just like, okay, you accomplished 0 reps in this workout, you get 0 points. This year in the quarterfinals, I could not do the 185-pound snatch, but I couldn't enter a score of 0. I had to enter dash because I couldn't even complete the first rep. And so I think that makes sense, especially when you go back in history and think about the 2010 CrossFit Games, when the story goes that Dave Castro was there on the sideline saying, if this dude, who happened to be Rich Froning, can't climb the rope, we're not going to give him the championship. We're not even going to let him go on the podium. And you fast forward 5 years, and the CrossFit Games champion is someone who could not do the pegboard. Not only that, but while all the girls were struggling for the entire duration of the event to do the pegboard, she, because there was no minimum work requirement, so credit to them for knowing the rules here, chose to not even try in the back half of the event, just get her forearms loose and warm, and then ended up killing Pedal to the Metal too.
But I think also that speaks to why Katrin's always been such a threat, is because she looks at the totality of the competition. Like, she's always been someone who's like, yeah, she's super fit and she prepares, but she doesn't just look at like, what can my fitness do in this workout? Like, she's thinking about every aspect of the weekend to grab points, and that's why you see her like climb into the 2019 games, and then 2020, and then continue to push to the top of the leaderboard.
Right, and it's not taking anything away from her and Ben's ability to strategize that. They may very well could have set up to the set and said, well, this event, we might not get a pegboard. If you fail it 3 times, there's no minimum work requirement. They didn't tell us that you have to continue to try throughout the thing. So if you're not going to get it, just accept that. Accept whatever your placement ends up being and get ready for the next one. And if that's the conversation that went on and they executed that accordingly within the rules, then I would say that that's not a problem with what Ben and Katrin did. That's a problem with the fact that CrossFit still decided to give all those athletes 50-something points for doing nothing.
Bam.
Do you think there should be a minimum work requirement on all workouts?
Not necessarily. Like, I didn't think that there was needed to be a minimum work requirement in that example. I just don't think you should get points for doing nothing, and especially if you don't try.
I like that a lot.
I think there should be a minimum work requirement.